They tried to bury you with lies, and now they're choking on the dirt they dug themselves with. Now, imagine this for a moment. Chosen One, a group of spineless actors, trembling behind their scripts, rehearsing your downfall like it was Broadway. They dressed you up as the villain, sharpened their tongues, dimmed the lights, and waited for the crowd to boo. But when the spotlight hit, you didn't just walk through it. You owned it. No meltdown, no panic, just silence so cold it made the audience flinch. They framed you, all right. And now they're sick to their stomachs because the picture they painted has started looking more like them than you. The mask is slipping, and they know it. You didn't need to scream your innocence. You let time develop the film. And now everyone sees exactly who was out of focus the whole time. Here's a fact they'll never admit, but it's eating them alive. Studies show that false accusations, when not reacted to emotionally, collapse under their own weight. Why? Because the truth doesn't chase a lie. It waits. It sits back while the fake story trips over its own holes. And guess what? You waited. You didn't panic when people started whispering. You didn't break when you were pushed into silence. You just let their illusion rot on its own stage. That's not passivity. That's tactical precision disguised as stillness. And now they can't even look you in the eyes without twitching because your peace exposes their guilt like a blacklight in a crime scene. And thank you, Chosen One. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing the like and subscribe button to help spread this fire to more souls, because it's our responsibility to shine truth into the dark corners of this world. Thanks for being part of this mission. You're not just watching this, you're a part of a force, a quiet storm, a resistance that doesn't scream. It shifts the atmosphere. You're one of the rare ones who didn't fall for the trap, and that means you're needed. Now let's get back to it. You were framed, not mistaken, not misunderstood. Framed, intentionally, strategically, with every move calculated to corner you into panic. They weren't trying to clarify anything. They were trying to destroy you, socially, emotionally, psychologically. It was an ambush, dressed up as a misunderstanding. And the most disgusting part, they had the nerve to smirk about it, thought they were clever, thought if they screamed loud enough you'd fold. But instead, you did something they didn't prepare for. You stayed quiet. And that silence, that's what's driving them insane now. Because in their script, the villain was supposed to scream. You didn't. You just watched. And they hate how small that made them feel. What kind of person do you think it takes to lie about someone with a straight face, to twist a story until the victim becomes the accused? That's not just manipulation. That's fear wearing a mask of control. They knew they couldn't beat you in truth, so they tried to assassinate your image. But guess what happens when the lie collapses and you're still standing? They become the villain they tried to paint you as. And now that lie? It's got a pulse, it's got weight, and it's crushing them from the inside. The problem is, they underestimated how chosen ones move. You don't explain yourself to cowards. You don't wrestle in filth with people who only feel powerful when they're surrounded by lies. You just stay still. Because chosen ones don't react to noise. We dismantle it with silence. While they raged, you recalibrated. While they lied, you leveled up. While they mocked, you mastered your next move. And now that silence, it's echoing, louder than any comeback could have. Their sickness now is spiritual, emotional, psychological, because they know the truth has left the station and it's on a collision course with their ego. You were framed, but you turned that frame into a mirror. And now the audience is starting to ask questions. Why is the one who said nothing the only one still walking with peace? Why does the accused seem more centered than the accuser? Because, chosen one, Truth ages like wine. Lies curdle like milk. And they're rotting in their own story. They framed you thinking they'd get away with it. They thought if they pointed long enough, loud enough, you'd break. But instead of folding, you became a ghost in their mind. You're not even fighting back. And still, they can't sleep. That's the part that's got them vomiting regret behind closed doors. Every word they said is a brick tied to their reputation. And the silence you gave them, that was the rope. And now, they know. You weren't framed because you were weak. You were framed because your power scared the hell out of people pretending to be good. And that truth, chosen one, that truth is screaming louder than their lies ever could. And listen closely, chosen one, don't you dare tap out now. What you just heard was the opening shot, the warning siren, the real dismantling of their entire fake little performance. That's what's coming next. Step by step, we're about to rip this lie apart until nothing remains but truth standing over the wreckage. So if your silence has ever been twisted into guilt, if you've ever been framed by cowards too scared to face your strength, drop a 333 in the comments to mark the moment you took your power back. And if this message hit like a punch through glass, send a super thanks and keep this storm alive, because every ounce of support fuels the mission to wake up every other chosen one who's been painted dirty by filthy hands. You're not alone in this. You're part of a force that doesn't beg for truth. We become it. And now, let's tear into this, one layer at a time, because if you really are who I think you are, you won't be able to look away. Let's get started. Number 1. They framed you, but forgot to destroy the original. You can steal the costume, imitate the voice, and rehearse the lines, but when the real one enters the room, the air changes, and suddenly the imposter forgets how to breathe. That's what's happening right now, chosen one. The ones who tried to replace you, copy you, erase you, they're suffocating in the presence of the very force they swore they buried. They thought they could twist your name into something dirty and survive the aftermath. But here you are, still standing, still watching, still unbothered. And that's what's got them sick, because nothing haunts a liar like the truth they couldn't kill. They copied your face, plagiarized your energy, tried to mimic your light, but they forgot one fatal detail. You're not a projection. You're not a trend. You're the original, and originals don't compete with replicas. They expose them by simply existing. That's the part they didn't account for. They thought framing you would work like magic. But what they performed was a curse, and the only ones it poisoned were them. Now imagine this, chosen one. You walk into a room where your reputation arrived before you, twisted, distorted, bent into something unrecognizable. They look at you, expecting guilt, shame, maybe even submission. But instead, you walk in like the air never changed, like you were never touched. And just like that, the illusion starts glitching, because you don't look like the villain, you don't speak like a fraud, you don't move like someone who needs approval. And suddenly, the story they told starts falling apart, not because you fought it, but because you didn't. That's what makes them sick. You didn't defend yourself. You didn't sprint toward every lie with evidence. You didn't feed their hunger for chaos. You just stood there like truth doesn't beg because it doesn't have to. Your calm didn't match their panic, and that mismatch is what made people start asking questions. The lie cracked not under pressure, but under comparison. You were too authentic for their version to hold water. Here's a psychological fact they'll never quote. Replicas require constant reinforcement. Originals don't. You never needed to remind people who you are. That's why they tried to erase you in the first place. They knew that if your presence lingered too long, their copy would disintegrate. Because you're not someone who blends in, you warp the atmosphere. And when the real thing walks in, even the best forgeries look like cartoons. The ones who tried to frame you didn't hate your flaws. They feared your authenticity. They feared how you made people feel without even trying. They feared your influence, your presence, your refusal to conform. And so, they did the only thing cowards know how to do. They lied. They gathered in corners, whispered in shadows, spun your truth into fiction, not because they misunderstood you, but because they could never be you. You know who else was framed and rose from it? Let's talk real examples. Rihanna was once ridiculed, mocked, dragged through scandal. People tried to define her by trauma. But did she argue? No, she built an empire in silence. Oprah was told she didn't belong on television. She was demoted, shamed, called unfit. She didn't scream. She evolved. Even someone like Johnny Depp, for years, mocked and cancelled before the full truth unfolded. He didn't scream back at the mob. He waited, and in that stillness, the truth sharpened like a blade. Every chosen one goes through that arc, the mislabeling, the smear, the framing. But chosen ones don't just recover, they ruin the system that tried to ruin them. So when you start asking yourself, why did they pick me? Remember, they didn't pick you because you were weak. They picked you because you were the threat that couldn't be domesticated, the fire that wouldn't burn out, the soul that refused to shrink. You were framed because your existence was a challenge to their fiction. You were framed because your truth made their lies sweat. And now that the lie is collapsing, now that the copycat routine is coming apart, they're realizing that imitating your presence is easy, until they realize your silence has gravity, until they realize your energy can't be bottled, until they see people gravitating back toward you without you saying a word. That's when they start trembling. That's when the sickness kicks in. Because when the crowd starts seeing the difference, when they realize your fall from grace was just another test you passed silently, the entire performance folds. You want to know what real power looks like, chosen one. It's when your enemies need a full-blown campaign to try to erase you, and you just need to exist to make them panic. You walk in, and people start second-guessing the lies they believed. You speak once, and it shatters months of gossip. You breathe, and the imposters choke. That's what you are now, living proof that truth doesn't beg, that being framed isn't the end, it's the beginning of their unraveling. They tried to destroy the image of you because they couldn't destroy you. But energy doesn't lie. And while they're busy faking your essence, you're out here rewriting the script they thought would bury you. So let them panic, let them sweat. Let them obsess over the fact that their version of you is cracking under the weight of your silence. You don't owe them clarity. You don't owe them peace. You don't owe them the dignity they never gave you. Because the truth is, you were never the copy. You were never the mask. You were never the myth. You were always the blueprint. And now that you've returned, whole, quiet, unbothered, they finally understand what they tried to erase. They framed you, but forgot to destroy the original. And now they can't stomach how perfectly you survived. Number 2, they screamed villain while standing in your costume. They wore your skin like a disguise, screamed, "Look at the monster," and now the only thing people see is how perfectly the mask fits them. That's the filth they tried to pull, chosen one. They painted you as the threat while hiding in a cheap costume stitched together with your stolen traits. They borrowed your kindness, rehearsed your empathy, even mimicked your wounds. Just long enough to convince the world you were dangerous and they were the misunderstood victim. But here's what they didn't expect. Villains can't hold character for long. The costume starts to slip. The borrowed light starts flickering. And the crowd, they're not blind anymore. They're laughing, not because you lost, but because your enemy put on your clothes and forgot to match your backbone. They screamed villain while standing in your essence. They tried to hijack your soul's blueprint and got lost in their own performance. You stayed silent while they performed an Oscar-winning fake breakdown, complete with crocodile tears and dramatic exits. You didn't say a word, and somehow every single person in the room started seeing the cracks for themselves. Because the truth doesn't need a microphone, it just needs time. You ever see a clown wear a crown? Looks cute for 5 minutes, then they open their mouth and it's over. That's what happened here. They played the part, repeated your words, imitated your peace, parroted your wisdom like they earned it. But the one thing they couldn't steal, your spirit, that energy, that silent weight you carry when you walk in a room. They copied the costume, but forgot the character development. That's why it collapsed. Now imagine this, a liar standing on a stage, your name in their mouth, your traits on their face, trying to keep their story straight. And then you walk in, still, calm, whole. The audience turns their heads and realizes, hold on, the one being accused doesn't look broken, doesn't look bitter, doesn't even look guilty. But the one who screamed the loudest can't stop twitching, can't stop explaining, can't stop sweating. That's what psychological projection does. It always boomerangs. They weren't accusing you to protect others. They were accusing you to hide from themselves. When someone screams, "Danger," while holding a mirror, they're hoping no one looks too closely. But you just stood still. And that stillness made every fake layer peel off them like old paint. Let's talk truth. Most people don't hate you for what you did. They hate you for who you are without them. You were a threat, not because you hurt anyone, but because you existed with power they couldn't match. That's why they needed to wear your skin. They thought if they talked like you, moved like you, acted like you, people wouldn't notice they were hollow on the inside, but real ones see through wax figures. And that's exactly what they became, melting imitations trying to scream their way into authority. The worst part, they didn't just try to mimic you, they tried to replace you. They tried to flip your reputation like it was reversible. They stole your kindness, then weaponized it against you. They used your compassion as camouflage while stabbing you in the back. They tried to turn your loyalty into a weakness, your peace into manipulation, your silence into guilt. And the crowd, oh, for a second, they bought it, but seconds don't last. And now, the same people who once questioned you are seeing who really had the mask on. You know who else they tried this with? Let's talk legends. Malcolm X was painted as too angry. They ignored the poison he was reacting to. His enemies mimicked his authority and called him the problem, until the truth outlasted the spin. Whitney Houston was mocked for spiraling, while vultures copied her vocal style, her fashion, her energy. They labeled her the villain of her own story, but the world eventually saw who was feeding off her collapse. Britney Spears was framed as unstable, while others capitalized off her fame and pain, wearing her image like a costume and profiting from her destruction. Jesus, peace be upon him, was called a blasphemer, framed, betrayed, and accused by the very people claiming to uphold righteousness. It's a cycle. Chosen ones are always framed by people who want their light, but don't want to do the work it takes to earn it. So when you start asking, why me? Here's why. Because you were too original to be ignored. Because your presence made fake ones panic. because your very existence became a mirror they couldn't look into without crumbling, so they dressed up in your aura and called you the demon. But here's the beauty: the real can't stay hidden, and the fake can't stay standing. Eventually, everyone gets tired of watching a performance. The mask slips, the tone changes, the script stops making sense. And the only one left standing with clean hands and a clean conscience is you. They screamed "villain" while wearing your voice, your love, your wisdom, but now they're exposed. Because villains don't hold eye contact like you do. Villains don't carry silence like a sword. Villains don't move with grace while under attack. They cracked under the weight of trying to be you, and now the room knows who the problem really was. And you didn't say a single damn word. You let their panic reveal itself. You let their overacting turn into evidence. You let their accusations start sounding like confessions. Because truth doesn't chase. It stands there and waits for the world to catch up. Let them run, let them scramble, let them talk. The mask is off now. And they're finally realizing the only person who ever looked like the villain was the one who screamed the loudest while trying to wear your skin. Number 3, your silence became their sickness. You didn't raise your voice, you raised the temperature, and now they're melting in a fire you never even lit out loud. Silence, the most underrated weapon in the universe, and you, chosen one, you wielded it like a scalpel, not out of fear, not because you didn't have words, but because you knew the truth doesn't panic. It waits. It watches. And when you chose silence over reaction, you didn't just walk away. You planted a psychological landmine. Now, every time they open their mouth, they step on it. Boom. Another explosion of guilt. Another flash of exposure. Another moment where everyone starts thinking, why does the one being accused look so calm, and the one doing the accusing sound like they're unraveling? That's not coincidence. That's alignment. That's the universe whispering, don't move. Let the mask fall by itself. You didn't speak, and somehow you still told the loudest story. You didn't defend yourself, and still you were defended, energetically, spiritually, cosmically, because when you are aligned, when you are chosen, the universe does your talking for you. The wind shifts. The room changes. The truth starts echoing in places your voice never even reached. That's why they're sick. Because you didn't play the game, and somehow you're still winning it. And let's talk facts. Manipulators don't just fear exposure, they fear stillness. Silence breaks their entire system. They feed off reactions. They need you to panic, scream, explain, overcompensate. That's how they twist the narrative. That's how they make the lie feel real. But when you didn't give them the drama they needed, they started choking on the quiet. Because now they've got nothing to twist, and everyone's watching. And chosen one, I know the questions that haunted you in the middle of that stillness. Should I speak up? Should I clear this up? Should I fight for my name? But the truth is, you did fight. You fought by not fighting on their level. You fought by rising so far above their chaos, their games couldn't even reach you. You gave them silence, and silence became their karma in surround sound. Now look at them, repeating their story like a broken record, over-explaining, oversharing, panicking. They told it so many times, even they don't believe it anymore. And you've said nothing, and yet you've said everything. That's what's cooking them from the inside out. Your silence became radiation, quiet, invisible, but absolutely lethal. You didn't collapse, you calculated. You didn't argue, you outlasted. You didn't scream, you radiated a frequency so high it fried their illusions without you even lifting a finger. That's power, that's mastery, that's what chosen ones do. So let them keep talking, let them keep spinning their little web, because while they unravel, you're over here turning silence into a storm the whole room can feel. The universe didn't ask you to defend yourself. It asked you to hold position. And now your silence is echoing louder than every lie they ever told. Number 4. They wanted to humiliate you, but ended up stripping themselves. They tried to undress your reputation and ended up standing naked in the spotlight of their own lies. That's the thing about humiliation, chosen one. It always boomerangs. The moment they tried to make you the show, the universe flipped the camera. They thought they were directors of your downfall, but all they did was film their own collapse in 4K. They built a stage to disgrace you, and somehow they're the ones sweating under the lights. You didn't lift a finger, you didn't defend, you didn't even blink, yet every eye in the room started shifting from you to them. Because the moment you stayed still, their overacting turned into evidence. Their performance became a confession. Now imagine this for a second. They're on stage, screaming, waving props, shouting your name like it's an accusation, and you're just sitting there, calm, composed, watching, and suddenly the audience starts whispering, "Wait a second, why does the one being accused look more peaceful than the one doing the accusing?" That's when the shift happens. That's when masks start sliding off. Because truth doesn't beg for attention. It reveals itself in silence. You see, humiliation only works when you react. When you refuse to play along, it backfires instantly. You robbed them of their favorite weapon, your outrage. They expected tears. You gave them indifference. They expected chaos. You gave them composure. And that's when their act collapsed under its own weight. You didn't need revenge. You became the reflection that burned them alive. And here's what's really poetic. In trying to destroy your name, they accidentally destroyed their image. They spent hours rehearsing your downfall, not realizing the script was cursed. Because when you're the chosen one, humiliation doesn't lower you. It exposes who tried to pull you down. It's divine symmetry. The universe doesn't miss. It let them dig their own grave, decorate it with arrogance, and then trip right into it. Live. And I know what you're thinking. Why didn't anyone defend me when they lied? Because the universe didn't need anyone to. It needed to show everyone how liars behave when no one's stopping them. It needed them to unravel publicly so that when your truth finally stood up, it didn't need to speak. It glowed. Look around now. They can't even stand the mention of your name without cringing. They thought they'd embarrass you. Instead, they exposed their envy. They thought the crowd would laugh at you. Instead, the crowd learned exactly who to avoid. They wanted to humiliate you into silence, but your silence humiliated them into irrelevance. You didn't need to shout, "I'm innocent." The universe handled the PR. It shifted the narrative right under their feet, because humiliation doesn't destroy chosen ones. It baptizes them. It strips away illusions, burns the residue of naivety, and replaces fear with precision. They wanted to make you small in front of everyone. Instead, they made themselves microscopic in front of you. You were never the clown in their circus. You were the spotlight that exposed it. So don't you dare hide. Don't you dare wish it never happened, because that public mess they created, that was your revelation moment. Every rumor, every sneer, every smirk, it all became part of the evidence that you were never the problem. You walked out with clean hands. They walked out covered in their own projection. You walked out silent. They walked out trembling. You walked out free. They walked out forever, branded as the fools who mistook your grace for weakness. And now, every time they see you, calm, confident, untouchable, it reminds them they built the stage to destroy you and ended up performing their own downfall instead. Number 5. They wrote the script and forgot you don't follow orders. They cast you as the tragedy, but forgot you own the production studio. That's what drives them insane, chosen one. They wrote your downfall scene in advance. Every line, every tear, every collapse rehearsed in their head like a fantasy they couldn't wait to see play out. They had the props ready, the audience planted, the fake sympathy rehearsed. But when the lights came on, you didn't act your part. You didn't cry on cue. You didn't shatter when they yelled, "Action!" You stood there with that eerie calm that ruins every manipulator's plan, because you don't follow scripts written by cowards. You see, people who build fake narratives always think they're directors. They think they can choreograph chaos, script your emotional breakdown, and sit back while you self-destruct on schedule. But here's what they didn't plan for. You don't perform. You evolve. You don't audition for the role of the victim. You rewrite the whole damn plot. They wanted a spectacle, but you turned the camera around and gave them a documentary. Now they're caught mid-scene, stuttering lines that don't make sense anymore because the truth already changed the genre. Now imagine this for a moment, chosen one. They're backstage whispering, "Why isn't it working? Why isn't the crowd turning?" Because you didn't play your part. You broke character. Or rather, you revealed character. Theirs. You let them act out every lie until the whole world saw that the only actor on stage was them. You didn't react. You redirected the whole production. That's not just defiance. That's artistry. They called you dramatic, but you were just prophetic. They tried to narrate your pain, but forgot pain makes the best editor. You sliced their script to pieces with silence, sharper than any monologue. That's when they panicked, because nothing terrifies a manipulator more than losing creative control. They wanted to tell your story, but the story turned sentient and started telling the truth. Look at history. They tried it with Princess Diana, painted her as unstable while they orchestrated her heartbreak. Yet the public saw the truth. She didn't fight dirty. She let authenticity rewrite the headlines. They tried it with Johnny Depp, scripted him as the villain in his own life story until evidence turned the whole narrative inside out. The same audience that once believed the fiction ended up applauding the silence. Even Michael Jackson, they built entire careers off demonizing him, but now, decades later, people are finally seeing how manufactured that script was. The truth doesn't age, it only matures. So when you wonder, why me? Why did they choose me to destroy? The answer's simple, because you were too real to be edited. You weren't supposed to read their lines. You were supposed to expose the play. You turned their horror film into a documentary about self-exposure. You didn't argue. You didn't run. You let the truth air itself out like smoke in a room. Slow, suffocating, undeniable. That's what the universe does for its chosen ones. It turns setups into spectacles. It turns lies into lessons. It turns manipulation into entertainment that backfires on the manipulator. And now they're improvising. Every day, rewriting lies to patch the holes truth keeps ripping open. They can't keep up. Their story has too many sequels, and none of them make sense. The audience isn't clapping anymore. They're watching. Quietly. Suspiciously. Because now everyone's wondering why the supposed villain never lost composure. Why the accused never lashed out. Why the one they tried to bury keeps rising without explanation. That's what burns them alive, your refusal to play along. You weren't supposed to survive the plot twist, yet here you are, rewriting endings like you own the pen. You didn't just flip the script, you incinerated it. And now the smoke from that fire is the only spotlight they can't hide from. So let them keep writing, keep spinning, keep performing, because while they're busy rehearsing lies, you're living truth. You don't follow orders, you follow purpose. And when a chosen one walks off a stage built on deceit, the whole theater collapses. You were never their character, you were the author the whole time. Number 6. You let their lies hang themselves. You didn't swing the blade, you just handed them a microphone and watched the truth sharpen it for you. That's the brilliance of your silence, chosen one. You didn't need to fight dirty. You didn't need to clap back, lash out, or throw mud. All you did was step aside, just enough, just long enough for their own lies to tighten around their necks like a noose they swore was meant for you. And now every word they spewed is echoing back, distorted, unraveling, contradicting itself until the only thing left is a spotlight on them. They thought lies had power, and they do, but only when you fuel them with fear. You gave them nothing, and that's what made them implode. You didn't need a sword. You let gravity do the job. You let time do the talking. You let their own voice become the executioner. Because when someone lies about a chosen one, they're not just battling the person. They're battling the truth frequency built into that soul. And the truth? It's a predator. It stalks liars like prey, slow, quiet, patient, until it pounces. You ever see a liar mid-breakdown? It's poetic. They repeat the same sentence, hoping it sounds more believable the 12th time. They switch stories. They blame context. They try to convince people that you are the manipulator, while twitching like someone who hasn't slept since the day they opened their mouth against you. That's not guilt creeping in. That's karma screaming in surround sound. Now picture this. They planned it all. The betrayal, the smear, the backstab. They told the lie to 10 people, made sure it echoed across rooms you weren't even in. And you? You didn't chase the rumor. You didn't plead your case. You just sat in your power, unmoved, untouched. And suddenly, the whispers started sounding less like facts and more like desperation. That's when people began to question. Why is the accused so composed? Why does the one telling the story seem like they're auditioning? That's the moment the rope began to tighten, not because of you, but because the truth started leaning on them like a shadow they couldn't outrun. And don't forget this, chosen one, you were never supposed to prove yourself. That's a trap. That's what they wanted, to pull you into the mud and make you scream like them, twist like them, fight dirty like them. But you chose peace. You chose patience. And the universe? It rewarded you with poetic justice. Now they walk around avoiding mirrors. They can't say your name without tasting guilt. They can't tell the lie anymore without watching the room shift, because the thing about liars is they always go too far. They keep talking long after the damage is done, and that's when people start noticing the holes. That's when they reveal themselves. Not you, them. Because truth doesn't collapse under pressure. It sharpens, and now their own words are being used as evidence, flipped and folded by the very people they tried to deceive. They tried to make a noose for your name and ended up swinging from the mess they created. So, if you're wondering if you did the right thing by staying silent, you did, because you let the lie rot in its own theater. You let the enemy monologue their way into exposure. You didn't scream, "I'm innocent." They screamed, "We're guilty," trying to convince the world you weren't. You don't have to clear your name, because the dust they kicked up trying to bury you just made their footprints more obvious. And now you're rising, and they're choking on their own script. That's what happens when you let a lie breathe too long in front of the truth. It hangs itself, and you just stood back and let gravity do what justice always does. Number 7. You were supposed to shatter, but you made the glass cut them instead. They tried to break you like glass, but forgot that broken glass cuts deeper than silence ever could. They counted on your collapse, chosen one. They thought the smear would splinter you. They thought the betrayal would leave you on the floor, shattered and pathetic, something they could sweep under the rug while grinning over your corpse. But here's the part that's got them waking up in sweats. You didn't break the way they wanted. You didn't beg. You didn't bend. You transformed. You didn't become fragile pieces. You became shrapnel, sharp, silent, surgical. Now every time they try to explain themselves, they end up cutting deeper into their own credibility. Every lie they retell, more blood on their hands. Every attempt to repaint the past, another scar they can't hide. See, that's the thing about trying to destroy someone who's built from truth. You can't break them. You can only reveal how sharp they were the whole time. They thought they were smashing glass. They didn't realize they were freeing a weapon. Now, imagine this. They slam the hammer down on what they think is your breaking point. But the shards fly back at them. One slashes their ego. Another hits their fake reputation. And the sharpest one, it lands right in their mask, slicing it clean in half. Suddenly, it's not you who looks broken. It's them who can't stop bleeding. And it's poetic, because they set it all up. They gathered the audience. They lit the torches. They screamed their lines, shaking with pretend righteousness. But the moment you didn't collapse, their whole script turned to confetti. The silence you gave them, that was the sound of the hammer cracking their illusion instead. You didn't come apart, you came alive. They didn't break you, they freed your sharpest edge. And now they're living in fear of their own invention. Every conversation is a landmine. Every question from someone they lied to is a trigger. Every attempt to control the story just proves they're no longer holding the pen, because you were the story, you were the truth. And they tried to erase the truth by framing it. But you don't frame fire. You don't contain lightning. You don't silence the chosen. You weren't shattered. You became a mirror that now shows them exactly who they are. And they can't stand to look. So let them keep bleeding. Let them drown in the mess they made, trying to watch you fall. Because you didn't fall. You rose up as the broken piece that cuts deeper than their entire play ever could. And now, the only thing shattered is the illusion they built to bury you. Number 8. They can't stomach you because you're the proof they lied. You don't need to say a word. Your survival alone is a loudspeaker blaring, "You lied, and everyone sees it now." They can't stand you, chosen one, not because of what you said, not even because of what you did, but because you're still standing, and your existence, it's wrecking their entire lie in real time. Every breath you take is a contradiction. Every win you get is a crack in the mask they wore when they tried to paint you as the villain. You don't need to argue anymore. Your presence is prosecution. You see, liars build castles out of illusion, but they crumble under facts. And nothing screams fact louder than the very person they said was broken, walking around glowing, untouched, and unstoppable. You're not just a person to them anymore. You've become a mirror they can't look into without gagging. You reflect the thing they fear most, the truth. And what really eats at them? You didn't even seek revenge. You didn't get down in the mud. You just kept rising, and every level you climbed made their lies collapse louder. Now imagine this. They walk into a room and someone brings up your name, and suddenly their throat tightens, their eyes flicker, their energy shifts. That's not coincidence, that's recognition. That's their subconscious choking on its own guilt. That's the body betraying the lie, no matter how polished the mask looks. They can't sit still because you represent everything they failed to destroy. You're proof that they were full of it from day one. They can't stomach you because you're the receipt walking. Because every accusation they made is now a ghost that haunts them every time you're mentioned. You are living evidence, and the jury has eyes now. You didn't just survive their story. You're the sequel they never wanted anyone to see. And this is where it gets beautiful. The more they try to erase you, the brighter you shine. The more they try to discredit you, the more people wonder, why are they so obsessed? Because here's the twist. Liars get loud when the truth walks in, and your calm, your silence, your continued elevation, it's making them scream internally. They can't explain why the villain they created has more grace, more peace, more power than the fake victim they pretended to be. Every room you enter now feels like a courtroom to them. Every eye that glances their way makes them wonder, do they know? Every win you post feels like another nail in the coffin of the narrative they tried to push. That's what eats them alive. You didn't play their game, and you still won. You didn't scream, I'm innocent. And now they're screaming inside just seeing your name. Because Chosen One, you're not just a threat, you're the undoing. You're the proof that they lied, and you're walking around like a witness wrapped in purpose. You didn't chase them. You didn't expose them. You just let time do the math, and now their whole equation is falling apart. So if they seem uncomfortable in your presence, if they flinch when someone mentions you, if they avoid eye contact like it burns, good. That's what guilt looks like when truth walks into the room wearing your face. You are the contradiction. You are the karma. You are the reality they can't rewrite. They can't stomach you because your existence proves they were always lying. Number 9. You became the question mark that haunts their alibi. They rehearsed a perfect story until your presence turned the stage lights on, and now even the curtains are whispering, liar. The truth is brutal, Chosen One. They didn't prepare for your survival, let alone your silence. Their entire scheme was based on a single fragile gamble, that no one would question them, that people would accept the story at face value, that you'd stay down long enough for the lie to settle in. But then you walked back in, not loud, not angry, not broken, just calm, composed, unbothered, and suddenly their performance cracked in real time. You didn't have to say a word, because your silence wasn't empty. It was louder than any defense. You became the unsolvable piece in their puzzle. You became the question mark that made every lie they told sound like it came from a script written in panic. They crafted an alibi full of half-truths and recycled victimhood. They decorated it with emotional manipulation, fake tears, and buzzwords meant to make people nod. But then came you, the walking contradiction, the unbothered presence, the living, wait, something doesn't add up. Now, watch closely. Every time they speak, they fumble. Every time someone asks them a simple question, they over-explain. Their voice cracks, their timeline shifts, their story grows arms it didn't have before. Why? Because the truth doesn't need rehearsal. Lies do. And they're sweating because you didn't play their game, and now the audience is wondering why the one who supposedly did the most harm is the one acting with the most peace. That's what haunts them. That's what turns every room into a cross-examination. You don't need to interrogate them. Your presence already is. They wanted you gone, erased, humiliated. Instead, you've become a living plot hole in their narrative, and plot holes make stories collapse. You are the glitch in their matrix, the ghost in their lie machine, the walking proof that something's off. Every time you post in peace, every time you succeed without clapping back, every time your name gets mentioned and you don't flinch, they panic. Because deep down, they know if even one person starts asking questions, it's over. And they were never ready for questions. They were only prepared for silence, for your absence. But you didn't disappear. You didn't evaporate under the pressure. You became the quiet presence that made their fake world crumble in slow motion. They can't explain why you're still standing. They can't explain why they're still talking, but somehow losing. They can't explain why their truth sounds more like a pitch than a memory. And now the very people they lied to, they're starting to ask the same question they've been avoiding. But why does the energy feel so off? Why is the one they accused the only one not trying to prove anything? You are the question mark that can't be silenced, the gap in logic, the crack in the glass. The reason their story trembles at the edge of collapse. And here's the poetic twist. They wrote the script. They played the victim. They chose the stage, but they forgot the one thing no liar can afford to overlook, the presence of truth. And that presence now walks into every room wearing your face. You didn't expose them. You simply existed. And they haven't slept peacefully since. Number 10. You didn't clear your name. You carved it into stone. They prayed your name would fade like gossip. Now it echoes like scripture carved in granite, unmovable, untouchable, and worse for them, unforgettable. They thought time would erase you, that silence would swallow the memory of what they did, that the dirt they threw would stain you forever. But you didn't rush to clear your name, chosen one. You didn't beg to be understood. You didn't enter damage control like some scared PR firm under pressure. No, you walked forward like a force of nature, torch in hand, with your head high and your truth glowing like molten gold. And that's what wrecked them. They expected a rebuttal. You gave them a rein. Every lie they told was meant to dissolve you into rumors. But instead, those very lies became chisels, carving your name into something permanent, not in gossip, not in confusion, but in respect, in silence, in awe. Because here's the twist. You didn't need to prove anything. The fire didn't burn you. It baked the stone. Your name isn't floating in the air anymore, subject to hearsay. It's etched in the minds of everyone watching, deep, loud, final. You are not a trending story. You're a permanent chapter, and the ones who framed you, they didn't just fail, they immortalized you. Let that sink in. They hand-delivered you the story that would define your legend. They handed you the flames, thinking it would consume you, but all they did was give you the backdrop to burn brighter than anyone thought possible. And now they're scrambling to rewrite their scripts, but the world already saw the truth, not because you defended it, but because you lived it, unapologetically, powerfully, silently. And that silence, it became a language the universe respects, because when truth stands still, everything false starts shaking. So no, you didn't clear your name. You didn't clean up their mess. You didn't dance for anyone's approval. You simply became undeniable. You are now what they can't outrun, what they can't explain away, what they can't look at without feeling like their lie is dissolving right there in their throat. You were the earth the whole time, solid, still, holding everything up while they threw stones from glass towers. But here's the poetic justice. They thought they'd write your ending. Instead, they engraved your beginning. And now your name, it's not just clear, it's carved in stone.